Hello, 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 and welcome back to another episode of the USL Show. We are live, and I'm in front of people, and this is really weird because they're all looking at me. But hey, nothing as weird as whatever happened at the end of the San Antonio Sacramento match, right? I love when my center backs are in goal, and hey, it's they had just one less center back on the field than I guess Hartford's had on the pitch all year long. Or is it too soon for that? I don't know. We'll talk about it all a little bit later. Ryan, how you doing?
I'm doing well today. It was 91 degrees here in Wilmington today and just incredibly hot even while driving in air-conditioned cars. So, just getting to that point of the summer.
Yeah, there was supposed to be an excessive heat advisory today, and actually feels almost nice. Almost. John, how are you?
Doing well. I'm just so here for the Kaler Live at the Match experience. This is the energy we need going forward.
If I don't get taken down by copyright strike, you might get the second half underway live from this feed.
Magic.
Alan?
Yeah, things are going well. I'm back in San Diego for the evening, where there was a high of I think 71 today. So really warm here as well, Ryan.
That's picture perfect weather, and if it can be 71 everywhere, as the saying goes, they just call it San Diego.
Well, look, there's a whole lot to talk about because we have a whole lot of matches and a whole lot of things have happened. I mean, we got Chattanooga, who can apparently just play better without 11 men, which is kind of a League One thing. They just kind of constantly do that. And then, Tab Ramos out, something that I'm personally surprised lasted as long as it did. And again, the craziness of whatever that Sacramento San Antonio match was, because by God, did it have it all. But let's start up in sunny Hartford, or is it rainy? I don't know. I don't check the weather. Let's talk about that because they lose. And the one thing that Hartford was supposed to do all year was score, and they don't. And, it's their defense couldn't bail them out because when has it done it this year at all?
Yeah, I've written a lot about it, talked a lot about it so far already, but in their last 18 games under Tab Ramos, Hartford has won twice. He's basically won 6 games in his entire tenure there. He's never decided on a system. This is a club that invested a lot in his vision over the offseason. And then it turned out he pretty much didn't have a vision when it came to the tactics and style. I think the Indy game was interesting to be the point where he got fired because, they won the XG battle 1.5 to 0.5. They were the team that deserved to get a win there. But once again, the defense just couldn't bail him out. Kudos to Hartford for trying with the big name manager, but I think it's clear they need somebody who knows the USL more than just the star appeal of a Tab Ramos.
Yeah, this defense was incredibly disappointing all year. That's 9 different games this year they've allowed multiple goals. And even in the games that they've scored multiple goals in, I think 6 on the season, 4 of those games, they still ended up with a defeat on. And it's interesting a dynamic because Kaler and I spoke with Ray Reid at the start of the year, and they were all very excited about having Tab Ramos in. We saw at the end of last season that they tried to string things together, but yeah, just with the way they've started this year with just 2 wins on the season, just 1 win at home, and especially with a Hartford team that we thought would be a little bit better than what we're seeing right now is just incredibly disappointing. But they made the change. They're 6 points out of a playoff spot, and it's probably time that you really need to start kind of reversing the results, almost kind of what Tulsa did last season, that they need to start kind of making a run for the second half.
Yeah, the interesting thing is look back at Hartford and that 0-0 Lou City game is kind of an aberration from what this team had been. But I think it also points to it's not too late for them to turn a corner if they can get some focus on defending and stop letting in multiple goals a game. There's still a team in there that, like Ryan said, is 6 points out of a playoff spot, which is also wild. The bottom end of the East is still pretty open for them to be able to hop on this train and hopefully turn their season around. It's now, it's a smart time of the year to fire your coach, right? And when you still have a pretty long landing strip. It's halfway through the season, so essentially, if you turn your season around and have a better second half, you could easily find yourself sneaking in and getting into the playoffs. But yeah, it was. I remember this hire in the summer or in the off season, not the summer. It's almost the summer. In the off season, being kind of heralded as a smart move, it just never materialized. And sometimes this is what happens when you go try to hit a home run. I mean, look at the Padres in San Diego right now. They sign a bunch of players and it's not working out. And sometimes it happens. You hire somebody and it's not a great fit. And sometimes you go back to Greg Berhalter.
I guess my request to Hartford right now is don't stop investing in the club, because I've been really critical of Hartford because they in the past have not, at all invested in the team, and they had an amazing fan base. And now they invest in the team and it doesn't work. And I'm really worried that ownership might say, well, spending money didn't work. What was that all about? And there also is a little bit of the dynamics of the firing I think were interesting. I can't remember the last time that I saw fans just openly celebrating a sacking in the USL. Most of the time it's like, hey, sorry it didn't work out, we still love you here, nice guy, love you long time, and there was nothing but hate for Tab after this. Pretty much Hartford kind of came out and said, we're about to piss the league.
I think the interesting dynamic for them was that he came in really as like the savior figure that was going to bring Hartford back to the level that they had the first couple of seasons after they were an expansion side, when they were really quite good. And you can blame ownership for like the Alex Dixon types, the players that really were the stars of that team, ending up in other places. But you hope to see the sustained investment. And given that they just went out and traded for Edgardo Rito, who is by all accounts demanding a pretty rich extension at this point, and then firing Tab Ramos a couple weeks later, just seeing those moves in tandem makes me think that they're going to keep spending money no matter what, and that they want to improve this roster with or without Tab. Or maybe they just don't have any idea what they're doing, which is certainly possible too. I mean, I'm curious to see what becomes of Hartford for the rest of this season, given where they are in the table, and just relative to everything around what's a pretty fascinating club right now.
Yeah, what I was looking back through last season, what was interesting was Harry Watling resigned on June 25th, 2022. So almost a year to the day did they make the same kind of change in season last year. But I still feel like you need for Hartford to kind of still continue to push and invest, especially when you have Rhode Island with good friend of the show, Connor Smith, taking over her as manager there. And if you're going to start getting more of these regional opponents into the league, that you still need to keep pushing and try to impress kind of moving forward. I mean, you have Loudoun, San Diego, Tulsa, Las Vegas, and San Antonio as your next 5 games, and 4 of those are on the road. So it's very much a tall order to kind of get this team back on track.
I think that's about all for that. And this probably wouldn't be it for me, but I want to just go ahead and segue for our good friend, Alan. Because I've heard he's been to San Antonio or San Diego once or twice. Not San Antonio. Have you been to San Antonio?
Nope.
I'm not sure they would. Anyway.
I'm not sure they would let me in at this point.
That's a fair point. But been to San Diego once or twice, so I've heard. And Lily Ball be Lily Ballin', which actually involves scoring goals, which most people don't think of Lily Ball. Which, hey, good on them. What did you see from the match, Alan?
I saw a really informed Pittsburgh team and a resurgent San Diego team play a pretty interesting match. I didn't think San Diego played particularly poorly. This has been the run that they've been on. I think that they played decently well. You had some pretty good performers. Adrian Perez is having a nice glow up of late. Was kind of in and out of the lineup, but he's kind of solidified his place. I think you saw an important injury happen with Alejandro Guido having to exit early, and I think that really hampered San Diego's game plan. And then, you would think, based on kind of watching it, that San Diego probably deserved something out of this match. And I think, in all fairness, a 1-1 draw seemed to flatter Pittsburgh at times, but I think this is kind of who Pittsburgh can be, is a team that just absorbs, and is comfortable defending, and look pretty good in defense, and were able to kind of put the game where they wanted to, and then get a nice set piece goal, which has not necessarily been San Diego's weakness this season until pretty late. We've seen a couple set piece goals, and I'm not sure what that comes down to, just maybe regressing to the mean of not really giving up tons of set piece goals, and then all of a sudden now you're giving up some set pieces on, maybe not the first ball but the second ball, or just some kind of sloppy defending in that set piece. It's frustrating as a San Diego fan, but I think, realistically on the calendar, you probably put the way that Pittsburgh's been playing, you probably chalk this up as a loss to begin with. And then you were excited to get out of there with a draw at least, and then to give up that last minute goal. And then kudos to Pittsburgh for, playing the game that they seemed like they wanted to play of sitting back, defending, and then, having a really nice set piece where they were able to put the ball in stoppage time to get the victory and kind of gut punch San Diego.
I mean, I was just going to jump in real fast before I head on out. I mean, look, Pittsburgh is just in form, and I hate to say it like that sometimes, but Pittsburgh is one of those teams that when Lily Ball is rolling, you just don't beat it. It's almost impossible, and it kind of sucks that San Diego's on the other end of that. I mean, if I'm San Diego, I'm hard done. I feel a little hard done that I don't walk away with any points, but cross-country trips suck.
Yeah, it was a tall task, no matter who is traveling across the country to go to Highmark, where I think it's maybe 9 straight wins for the Riverhounds, which is something incredible. But to do what they did in that game, which is absorb pressure, yes, but without Jamali Waite in goal since he's off at the Gold Cup, neither Robbie Mertz nor Albert Dikwa were starting offensively for them. It was a kind of a classic Lily game where he just made some of the right changes to keep things solid, especially with like the Dos Santos injury. I thought Tony Lopez was very impactful off the bench for them. He's somebody who's not really had a ton of time, but I think the physicality that he brought in the midfield was a really good anchor for the direct style of play that got them the 2 goals to get that comeback win. So very classic kind of Lily performance, as we keep repeating. I do want to shout out Adrian Perez, though, Alan. He's really played well these past couple of weeks. I think he's a pretty natural fit on the wing when San Diego's using more of that back four. So something to watch for sure, because that goal he took was really well taken.
Yeah, I mean, this is just more of another classic kind of just Pittsburgh victory that we've seen time and time again within this league. I mean, credit to San Diego for getting the early start, and they've already are on a very tough kind of road trip to start with right now. I mean, you have Pittsburgh, Indy 11, Hartford, and Colorado Springs as these 4 games in a row. And we knew coming off the back of 2 games against San Antonio and a game against Sacramento in between those, that this is going to be their hardest portion of the year. And they fought well. 5 without a win at the moment, but it's just you're going into Pittsburgh, a team that's still unbeaten at home this season. It's just a very tough environment to go and get a result here. But what's interesting, at least from the other side, is Pittsburgh's next 3 games include 2 games against Louisville and a match against Sacramento in between. And I think that's going to really start to see Pittsburgh start to separate themselves from the rest of the Eastern Conference if they can get out of these next 3 games with 6 points at minimum.
Yeah, and you mentioned the separation from the East. Pittsburgh in first right now, but second place, Charleston, and third place, Memphis. Those 2 teams were in action against each other over the weekend. Really crazy game. Stephen Glass, the Memphis manager, was actually sent off around the 60th minute or so. But Memphis does end up winning that one 3-2. So love to get a take from you, Ryan, on what you're thinking about both of these teams right now.
Yeah, I mean, Memphis just shows that they're still in form. I mean, in the last 5 games, they've matched the same results that Pittsburgh has had right now. And it seems like it was a club that we were all very down on to start the year. I mean, it was the debacle around the Goodman and just situation, and they just started everything really slow, but they've turned into a team that has had a better start to the year than they did last season. And to do so going up against their former manager and Ben Pierman basically having his homecoming match at Memphis has to feel very good after the way that they kind of separated at the end of last season. And for on the other side, you look at Charleston with only one win in their last 5, as well, they're still second in the Eastern Conference right now. They're at a -4 goal differential, which is just really unheard of at the moment, and maybe a sign of a little bit of a few red flags. But I mean, Memphis has been in terrific form, and to get a victory over Charleston has to feel great.
Yeah, this was this had quite a few like blunders, if you will, for Charleston, and all of them involving defenders or Trey Muse. I think, some smarter play by a youngish goalkeeper. I'm not sure how old he is anymore.
Early mid-20s.
Yeah, and so I think one of them may be a little unfortunate catching his cleat. The second one, the third goal was another one where he kind of is maybe too aggressive, and either one of those two go his way, and we're talking maybe a little bit different game. It's super entertaining, and I think a good example of sometimes it's better to be lucky than be good, with the headed goal from Battery, the kind of fluky clearance back pass-y thing that led to Memphis 901's first goal. But credit those teams for putting players in those positions to take advantage of some of those kind of miscues by defenders or goalkeepers. But I thought it was interesting that a lot of these goals came from kind of these sloppy mistake plays and or lucky deflections, and that's what makes the beautiful game is that sometimes those weird things happen, and pretty entertaining. Charleston probably a little bit upset with how things went, which was I didn't see all of the games, so I'm not sure why Glass got red carded, but his response to the referee seemed to be like he knew what was coming. Like he's like, fine, all right. Usually get hot, right? He's like, all right, fine. But this was a fun one that I'll probably go back and spend a little bit more time watching, because I think it is an example of two teams playing a pretty entertaining style of soccer. Charleston being pretty direct. And then also it shows the youth of what's going on in USL, where guys are making mistakes and fun things where things happen.
Yeah, I mean, just thinking about the game at large, like Charleston outshot Memphis 19-7, which is pretty stark in terms of the differential. They were stronger in terms of the actual chances they were generating in that first half. I thought Fido Barajas really had a great match, getting out in transition, finding room to operate. He got the goal, but there were so many instances where he was getting in behind the fullback and really wreaking havoc. And to Memphis's credit, they adjusted nicely. Rashawn Dolly, who can basically play anywhere from striker to fullback, he was on the wing in this game, and he ended up switching sides and basically man-marking Barajas and limiting what he could do in the second half, which was a really smart change. And you can mention the luck for sure, but I thought that Memphis's process offensively was a lot better. A lot more focused on finding Emerson Heineman, Aaron Molloy in the midfield and working from there. These are two teams that feel like they're going to be there at the end of the season, no matter what. I think I trust the talent. They've shown tactically that they're up for it. So really interesting matchup, and lots to look forward to next time we get the Pierman rivalry game.
Yeah, I think, this shows just how good Barajas is for Charleston. It was, him being kind of directly involved in both goals, but also Rodrigo da Costa had some really nice play as well. And so again, this is a really fun one to go back and watch and see some of the talent that USL can provide, besides, maybe some of the, a reminder of some of the names that you need to get familiar with or familiarize yourself with, like the Barajas, the da Costa, the Kisiadus, like those. It was just a fun game. And so I do want to go back and spend some time watching this one back, because I think it's one of the more entertaining games this week.
And what's interesting is when these two teams meet again on the pitch, it'll be August 26th, as we're kind of getting into the business portion of the season. And the games in hand that Memphis have right now over everyone else in the Eastern Conference could be incredibly crucial, as this team could very well find themselves in first place in a few weeks if they can win those games in hand. So I'm very interested to see kind of where these teams end up towards the end of the year. And it's very much possible that we could see a rematch, part 3 in the playoffs.
Yeah, I mean, it's really something there with that matchup of two of the top teams in the West, or East rather, but we did have one in the West, and that was that crazy Sacramento win over San Antonio. The big controversy came pretty late on in the game. There was this sequence where Jordan Farr ends up getting a straight red for essentially coming out of his box and sweeping right into Sebastian Herrera. So because he had the red, they had to put a center back in goal and immediately gave up a goal from a free kick. And then a couple of minutes later, Mitchell Tainter went in very hard on Keko for a yellow, but it seemed like the red that he then got for a second yellow was for language at the referee. So plenty of havoc at the end there. I did think the Republic were just the better straight up. But let's start with you, Alan, on just thoughts in general from a pretty crazy one.
Yeah, I think Sacramento is like inarguably like one of the strongest teams in the USL this season. They've been kind of building on the success they had last year, and it's evident this year why they went on a pretty deep cup run last year. It's a well-coached team. They're really tough to play. They're really tough to beat. They don't give you a lot, and they can score. And so this is, one of the teams that I think people are looking at as kind of this early favorite out of the West. San Antonio has had a little tough run of late. They've played decently well, but I think they've been kind of running into some pretty tough competition. And, maybe this is the difference between last year and this year is I think that they win some of those games that they've drawn in the past, right? I'm looking at the two San Diego games. They probably win both of those last year. So just a little bit of a blip in the road, but San Diego, Locomotive, and Sacramento. Like we talked about San Diego's tough run. This has been a pretty rough road for them. And then they get Birmingham and Memphis 901. So they're not through it yet either. It's been brutal for some of these teams, like the schedulers. And then again, some of the resurgence of some of these teams have made the schedule different. I think, a pretty well-deserved red card for the first one. And I have to agree based on the referee's response and what he was like pointing to his mouth, like, hey, I got to give you a second yellow. Maybe a little unfortunate. And then I disagree with the announcers. I thought the goalkeeper got pretty darn close to saving that, like within inches. I was like, oh, okay. And I think maybe Farr, I've seen Farr make saves pretty similar to that. Like, I think it was, I'm going to put this on frame and I'm going to try to hit the top corner. I'm not going to put as much pace on it. It looked like he was on the practice pitch. And so, like, good for him for hitting the target, because let's be real, we've seen plenty of USL players not do that in that instance. But I thought Sacramento is just playing really well. It's the same argument for Pittsburgh in the East. It's just that they're just on a really, really good run of form. They're playing really well against tough opponents. And, San Antonio, maybe not the strongest they've been. The Adeniran going back to St. Louis, I think puts them at a slight disadvantage as well, which is a bummer for them because I thought he makes that team significantly more dangerous. And so just trying to like rebalance that team and find a replacement for those goals is going to be a little bit tough for San Antonio. But if there's a team in the West that I think can get through this gauntlet and still be great and still be maybe in a home playoff match, it's San Antonio. And so hang your head high, San Antonio. You have a slight reprieve, but I think when all said and done, San Antonio is going to benefit from going through this tough stretch and be mentally tougher on the back end.
Yeah, I think this is really the story of the match was that we learned from all season last year and just from all off season that San Antonio dubbed themselves the mentality monsters. And when you go into a match and get 2 red cards, it's really hard to kind of justify that. But like Alan, you had mentioned, this is just a really small kind of blip in the road. But if you look on the other side in Sacramento, that they are very much the best team in USL right now. And when you compare their current ELO rating that I have them at right now to 1164, at this point in the season, they're doing better than what San Antonio was doing last season. And that San Antonio team was the greatest team in USL history. That this is a very good Sacramento team that we're seeing right now play out. And going into Sacramento is just a very tough place to get a result. But the one match that everyone should really have circled on their calendar right now is July 8th, when Sacramento Republic travel across the country to play the Pittsburgh Riverhounds, as that pretty much just has to be the match of the season so far.
Yeah, that'll be a great one. And I think just comparing those two teams, Sacramento looks to get out on the front foot a lot more often. And I think that's been their growth year over year, where they were defense first almost to a fault in 2022. And it worked for them in the Open Cup, where that had to be the mentality against MLS teams. But I think it did bite them a little bit within the league play and the playoffs. There's no better encapsulation of what's different than that second goal from this game, where you get Damia Villader, one of the fullbacks, crossing to Jack Gurr, the other of the fullbacks, right in the heart of the box to score a goal. You don't see two defenders linking up like that in the context of really any soccer league. And I think it just shows the balance that they've got, the way that they're able to commit players forward, knowing that they have the solidity, knowing that somebody is stepping back to cover. It's a very fluid system right now, and it's a joy to watch. San Antonio has some questions in my mind. I mean, the Adeniran thing is a huge deal. He's the surest goal scorer that they had on that roster. And I think they've been getting hot finishing from Oluwaseyi, none of the others really finishing, but just having one of your two legit scorers leave is a huge problem for them. I'm not loving what Alan Marcina is doing in the midfield at the moment either. I think he's putting Juan Azakar out of position and putting him too high, where he's not able to be activated in the best possible way. I think the deployment of Jorge Hernandez is kind of this lone, very lonely number 10. Doesn't give him the opportunity to link play, but it also leaves their pivot a little bit weaker. There's a lot to figure out. And he's not been helped by a ton of injuries and the fact that they seem to add a new signing or a new loanee pretty much every week. I mean, even Ismail Ajome last week went right into the lineup after signing. They're still in great shape in the table. They're still very talented, but I just want to see a little bit more progress from San Antonio. One other thing just relevant to the teams here, I don't know if either of you saw that Sacramento is expected to announce another go at a stadium bid for MLS in the next 60 days, which seems crazy after the rejection and the announcement of San Diego being a thing. But go off, Kevin Niggle. I guess Huddersfield wasn't enough.
I hold the key that they're getting Sir Patrick Stewart involved in this, since he is a Huddersfield town fan, and eventually it'll all accumulate with us getting a Jake Edwards biopic played by Captain Picard himself.
Wild. I mean, it worked for San Diego, right? Like, if you build it, they will come, right? They start with a new stadium, and they're like, "Hey, we got this stadium." And not that anything wrong with where Sacramento plays right now, because it's big enough to host, but it's also, I mean, I think if you build a nice shiny product and can entice, it's like the one time it works, right? I think what is it? Kansas City has the indoor where no one plays because they tried to build it to entice someone to come. I mean, it worked, I guess, in this one instance, but I mean, outside of, I mean, you say Vegas, you say, you start naming off Tampa Bay, you start Louisville, you start naming these cities that USL teams are playing in. Sacramento has just as much of an argument to come back to them as anybody else is. I mean, MLS has already said yes to them. So, I mean, fine, I guess. Like, shoot your shot, right? Like, worst they can say is no, and you're in the same position you are right now.
I just always laugh whenever they 60 to 90 days is always like the generic response they always give for a stadium. It's like, oh, in 60 to 90 days we'll get something done, and that's been like the one rallying cry they've had for Inter Miami Stadium since it's been announced. That I was like, oh, in 60 days we'll get something done. But yeah, I mean, Sacramento has obviously proven that they've been MLS quality since I guess 2014 when the team was announced, that they've been ready to kind of go to that next level. And especially for California, it's a state that could very much handle the number of teams that they have right now. And I guess it does kind of play a role with the A's having, unfortunately, pretty much leaving Oakland, that there'd be a gap of professional sports up in that part of the country. But it kind of remains to be seen what Sacramento's future will hold, if it's going to be in USL or MLS.
Yeah, something to watch for sure. Did want to hit on one League One game from last week before we moved on. I mean, as always, wild stuff in League One. I think there were maybe 5 red cards in like 8 games played or something, because League One. But in the game we're going to focus on, that 3-2 win for Forward Madison over Lexington. There was a red card in this one where Mauro Sixchero came on about the 60th minute. He then headbutts somebody within 1 minute of coming on and is immediately sent back off. Like, that's iconic stuff. But I'd love to get some takes on that or anything else that went down in this one.
Zinedine Zidane would be proud.
Yeah.
But I mean, props to Forward Madison right now. They have 3 wins on the bounce, something that they didn't complete at any point from last season. I think you have to go pretty much all the way back to the start of the 2021 season to find the last time they won 3 consecutive matches. And they find themselves just 1 point off the top of the table in USL 1, that it seems like they've gotten things turned around. I had a tweet earlier last week at the end of that match that this is Forward Madison's best start to a season in club history, and they have a former Wilmington Hammerhead player as the manager leading at the helm.
I think the wildest part to me about the headbutt was like he kicks out 2 at the player before he headbutts him.
Yeah.
So it's like it could have been 2 yellows, it could have been a yellow and a red. Like he could have collected all the cards at that point. Maybe not the strongest performance from Amal Knight on the 3rd goal. Someone who's had a pretty successful season so far, and someone that his name pops up from time to time. You knew it would only take a chance for him to get a shot and consistent playing time before he can show his value. And so it's nice to see him kind of get his shot and have a pretty good season. You'd like to see him do more on the 3rd goal, but I think it's also some of the other goals were just really well worked, really nice quick ball movement, really nice solid shots. So a good display from both teams. Maybe unfortunate for Lexington that Forward Madison got a red card, because then they're defense first and maybe not as open as you would like to play. But good on Lexington for fighting back. This could have very easily just kind of rolled over. It was 3-1 at the end, at the first half. You just kind of get out of there, and big on them for coming up. I think they had a goal called back from offside. So it's nice to see Lexington be as successful as they are. For an expansion club, that they're still in the conversation of, hey, we're fighting for a playoff spot. We're not Fuego. And it was nice to see them kind of fight to try to finish this game. But again, Forward Madison, the joke is they have more kits than wins, but now they're kind of pushing it back against that narrative to say we have actually as many kits as wins now. So that's nice. It's nice for them as well to see a team that I think when they first started were a lot of people's like second favorite team, right? There was a lot of love around the kits, but also some of the guys that were playing for that team were really beloved soccer players in USL, but also just in their local communities. And so to have this team kind of find their groove again is really nice to see a team like Forward Madison kind of come out of the meme and into the competitive. And so it's nice to see that.
Yeah, I think they're only 1 point off of first place at this point, which really an accomplishment, just given how miserable the past couple of years have been there. This game itself was an odd one for sure. I think both teams had 6 shots apiece across the whole 90 minutes. Like, that's very low to see a 3-2 game end up as the result. I thought Forward Madison looked a lot better, certainly in terms of the ideas. The attack was very fluid. Christian Chaney was all over the place. Bartman got a goal, but the way that he was filling in the half spaces, stretching out that Lexington 4-4-2 was really impressive. And you can fault Knight for sure. I think that was a good shout, Alan. I sort of forget that he is somebody with like actual caps for the Jamaican national team, and I think he's really been an anchor for why this team, if not a playoff contender, is in the solid second tier where they're never going to embarrass themselves in the same way as a Central Valley or a Chattanooga. Like they're very much competent right out of the gates, and it is what it is in your expansion year. Like they're putting out a competitive side, and they've got a lot to build on. So I think losing 3-2 but coming back like they did is kind of the encapsulation of you're building a culture, you're building a mentality, but there's things to improve on heading forward. But good stuff as always from them. And shout out to Tyler, by the way, who not been on in a couple of weeks, but providing the best coverage of everything Lexington online. So check that out.
Yeah, I mean, what's most impressive with each team having 6 shots out of this one was that Fort Madison put each of those 6 shots on target for that match. And I mean, this is Monterey Pay levels of conversion rate. But I think what's an interesting discussion ahead within USL 1 at the moment is that we're seeing a very real separation between those teams who are in the playoffs versus those teams that aren't. I mean, you look at Lexington right now, who are 7 points back from Richmond, who's currently 6, but you see the teams who are in that top 6 only separated by 2 points at the moment.
Yeah, really something. Any more notes on League One or the championship? If not, I did want to throw out a quick shout to the dozen participants from the USL in the Gold Cup right now. 2 Oakland Roots doing really well, where Brian Tamakas got a goal for El Salvador, and Nabil Hackshaw, again, his Roots teammate, got an assist for Trinidad. So that's awesome. I know Cuba is playing tonight as we're recording, and Reiko Rosarena is in net with Jorge Corrales in the back line. So that's Tampa Bay and Tulsa. Yeah.
You know his brother plays for the Rays, right?
No way. Yeah, never heard of him. Clearly, the better athlete ended up, well, I guess, as the third string goalie for the Rowdies, but that's neither here nor there. But yeah, always fun to see on the international stage. Like, this is a legit tournament, and there's, hey, that guy who's not getting any games for FC Tulsa. Like, that's always fun. But speaking of Tulsa, we can move into the prediction segment here. And we'll start off with the game of Tulsa going up against Detroit, the Dario Suarez Memorial Derby. So love to get a pick from you there, Ryan, to start things out.
Yeah, this has to be a really crucial match for both teams. You look at Detroit and Tulsa, both currently on the outside of the playoff picture, looking in, although Detroit is level on points with Loudoun, who is that 8th spot right now. I don't know. You're looking at an FC Tulsa team who's lost 3 in a row and no wins in their last 4. But Detroit City, despite their 1 defeat they had against Orange County, that was a very tough defeat there. I still feel like they're going to find a way to get 3 points out of this one. So I have them winning and getting back into the playoff line, above the playoff line.
Brew doesn't agree with you, which is not surprising. He doesn't watch a ton of soccer. He doesn't know. He's usually sleeping. This one's a tough one. I'm not super convinced with what Tulsa's doing, but I'm not 100% convinced with what Detroit has done over. I mean, they've had a stretch of time where they beat some teams that they should beat, but then they don't perform well against some teams maybe that they should. And I think this might be one of the instances where maybe they played down to their opponent a little bit on the road, and I picked a draw.
Yeah, I ended up going draw as well. I think it bodes well for Tulsa that they're hosting this one. I think they're certainly at a put up or shut up phase of the season where you're starting to see a little bit of fan unhappiness with the way that they've kind of sold off some of the stars of that team. The fact that they've not been able to turn some good ideas and good performances into points. I would not be shocked to see Detroit turn to Dario Suarez starting this one, and I think he's going to come out motivated if so. Their attack has looked okay recently, and a lot of that is due to Ben Morris and Skage Simonson up top. But they've got 10 goals across the entire year, which is dead last by a mile. Like, at some point, you just got to say, listen, the form is okay, but we need to make a change. So a lot going on here. I don't think either of these teams are particularly great right now, though I do think Detroit makes the playoffs in the end. But I'm going to lean to the draw. Moving to the other end of the Eastern spectrum, though, We've got Pittsburgh, who's red hot, hosting Louisville City, who barely beat Las Vegas last week. So throw it to you, Ryan.
Yeah, it's been interesting trying to follow Louisville this year. That they've always been the personification of like the class of the Eastern Conference, and they're just not that same team that we're seeing and that we're used to this year. That being said, this is the first time these two teams have played each other since they had that very great playoff matchup they had and last season. And you actually have to go all the way back to Pittsburgh's first game of the 2020 season to find the last time they actually beat Louisville in a match. But I think Pittsburgh's form speaks for itself right now, and the Riverhounds get 3 points in this one and continue to kind of chase the Battery for the top spot.
Yeah, I think it's still a little bit too early for Lou City to go on their yearly run up the Eastern Conference. I think there was a couple years where they were like languishing for a while, and then at the very end they just turned it on and were Lou City again. I'm going to ride the hot hand on this one as well. I'm going to go Pittsburgh. I think, again, being at home is going to benefit them, and I think Pittsburgh is going to win this one. And no, I did not lock this one. Yeah, Pittsburgh.
Well, I'm going to make it a clean sweep in that I also went with Pittsburgh here. What they're doing is just too effective for a Louisville team that quietly has been quite poor on offense right now. And if you checked out the Tactics show, which was out today, I kind of focused on how bringing on Brian Ownby late in the game against Las Vegas was the thing that galvanized their offense, which, I mean, that's kind of hot calling the kettle black. Like, duh, Brian Ownby is going to be the thing that makes you finally click and attack. But at the same time, just the lack of ideas is really quite staggering, where this team is arguably more talented than they were in 2022. When you're bringing in someone like a Dylan Mayers, you're getting the growth from Ray Serrano, Elijah Winder, and yet they just look so meek in the press. They're not quite as fluid and flowing in terms of their runs. When you have to rely on a 30-plus-year-old to be your offense, you're not going to beat a team as defensively stout as the Riverhounds. Plus, high mark on a high mark. So feeling pretty comfortable with the Pittsburgh win, though I did not lock that either. Unfortunately, we don't have Phil tonight, but we are going to move on into the El Paso game where they're hosting New Mexico United, though. So, Ryan.
I have locked El Paso Locomotive with this one. I mean, it's still the same kind of El Paso team that we've been used to this week. And I think New Mexico, despite picking up the win off of a very great ride and goal from this past week, is slowly going to turn things around. But this is just the wrong team that they're going to run into this week. So I've locked Locomotive to win.
Yeah, New Mexico's been kind of a point, less than a point per game on the road right now. Although Locomotive better on the road than at home, which is slightly ironic for historical purposes for Locomotive. But I really like what Locomotive's doing. They're in a better form. I'm not sold on New Mexico as a team, and so I am also locking El Paso as someone yells at their significant other outside my window. So El Paso.
Yeah, you love to see it. I mean, probably a more fiery atmosphere than you're getting at some of these games at El Paso in midweek at a baseball field. But in any event, New Mexico is just a weird proposition for me right now. I'm a big fan of the Eric Quill hiring at manager. I think it's too soon for him to have implemented much of anything. They had a weird week where they lost to Phoenix and never really looked comfortable in that game, but they looked a ton better against the Switchbacks, and they really lean into the fact that they've got some talented fullbacks. They're able to use Santi Moar and Amando Moreno creatively on the wings. They put Daniel Bruce, who's kind of a natural fullback, at striker, and it paid off handsomely with a goal for him. So I like that they're trying things, but that's not going to pay off against an El Paso team with a bye week that is just so solid. Again, didn't lock it, but feeling pretty comfortable about the Locomotive getting the win here. Then we're moving on to quietly resurgent Orange County hosting Monterey Bay. Monterey just moved up to third, I think, and they had that wild sequence where Anthony Siaha saved a penalty. They just kind of boot it downfield, and 15 seconds after the penalty take, they scored a goal to win the game 1-0 against Miami. So two teams kind of trending up right now. But what are you thinking about the matchup, Ryan?
Yeah, I mean, Orange County, just for their credit, they've gone their last two consecutive games without conceding a goal at the moment, and they've really had that kind of resurgence to their team. But you're looking at a Monterey Bay team who's won their last 4 games, and they're currently unbeaten in their last 5. It's their second separate 5-game unbeaten streak this season, and if they can get a win or a draw out of this one, it'll tie their club history for the longest ever unbeaten streak they've had at 6. I think this is going to be a really fun and competitive match to see, but I'm going to take the points being shared in this one.
I mean, like Monterey Bay at the end of last year looked like a really, really tough team to play, and unfortunately, they just weren't in a position to take that end of the playoffs. But I think they've continued a lot of this success. Anthony Siaha, another guy we got to see come through San Diego, is a quality shot stopper at times. There's some positioning things, there are some depth chart things, but it's really nice to see him go off and be successful. He's a tough goalkeeper to score against. He's long, he's athletic. Like I said, really good keeper. There's just chaos happening right now. And
not a Siaha fan.
They're like, maybe they are. I don't know. I haven't asked them about that. Orange County, yeah, they've had 4 clean sheets out of the last 5. They've kind of figured out the goalkeeper situation a little bit. There's that blip against Colorado Springs, but it's nice to see them performing better. I just think Monterey Bay is going to be a little bit too tough here, and will come away. I think I picked Monterey Bay. Let me check. Yep, Monterey Bay for the win.
Yeah, I mean, you mentioned Colin Shuttler really performing nicely, especially in that Detroit game last weekend. And I mean, going on the road to Keyworth, getting the win, even if you can argue they were outplayed in certain respects, that's a really nice result to be getting. I like tactically how they're using Olaski pretty firmly as a winger rather than that lone forward. I think the gravity he gives you there within the context of their 4-3-3 really lets them play with a little bit more control. Defensively, they finally settled on the back line, and I think Dylan Powers has emerged as a pretty solid option at center back after kind of anchoring in the midfield when they went on that title run. So that's been a pretty inspired change. Monterey, for all that they do well, doesn't quite respond in games where they have to be the team that has the impetus, possesses the ball. They struggle to break down Miami other than that insane break. I think Orange County is clever enough to put them in that same situation where they have to break you down in that settled sort of defensive block, and I don't know if they can do it. So I think Orange County takes that momentum where they're up to 8th place. They're sort of in the playoff mix again and gets another win here. And then one more prediction, just moving back down to League One, where we've got a top 2 matchup out of the Southeast with North Carolina FC hosting the Charlotte Independents.
Yeah, the first meeting since they had the off-field altercation between fans and media members, and actually the last meeting potentially of these 2 teams of the season, unless there's a rematch within the postseason. But yeah, this is a very interesting matchup looking ahead. I mean, hosting by North Carolina at the moment, but you're looking at a Charlotte team who hasn't won a road match in any of their last 5 games. You have to go all the way back to their 2-1 victory over Richmond on April 1st to find their last road win. I think both teams have been very competitive with each other. Lexington had a 2-2 draw against North Carolina as their last match. I'm picking a draw with this one. I think it'll be a very tense affair, and I'd say it'd be very much under 3 goals scored, but a draw.
Yeah, I was leaning a draw on this one too, but I'm going to go with the League One home team bump. I think that's maybe going to be the difference between this game. The reverse fixture, a 2-1 Charlotte Independence win. So I think maybe it's just going to be a flip flop of that, and North Carolina is going to win this one.
Yeah, I mean, you think about the fact that both of these teams are winless in their last 2, but despite that, they've got, I think, the second and third best offenses in League One right now. I think North Carolina coming off of a little bit of a break is a big deal. Getting healthy, getting some time to train with Mensingen, McLaughlin, that whole attacking core, just to get more comfortable with one another. I do think the Independents looked very good in their last game out. yes, it was against the Red Wolves, so that's kind of an asterisk innately. But the way that Miguel Ibarra was so active in the midfield is nothing but a good sign for, I mean, that's a player with national team caps. He's very talented. And if he's able to drive play, they could really go places. But I think North Carolina just has it a little bit more figured out. I think the home field advantage matters, and I've got them winning this game. So that's it as far as predictions. Since we started off with Kaler live at the Birmingham women's game against Tennessee SC, I feel I'm duty bound to say that Birmingham is losing 3-0 right now. So Kaler must be a bad luck charm or something. But in any event, I was wondering if either of you had any more USL notes to hit on.
I guess I will say it's very great to see everyone kind of rallying around Minneapolis City at the moment after their trailer recently got stolen, and it's been incredible to see the amount of support and just donations they've gotten. So USL2 Club definitely worthy of your support.
Yeah, absolutely. I mean, it was really awesome to see just the community at large on like soccer Twitter and elsewhere coming and backing a team that, beyond having a really great brand, seems to be a great representative for their area of Minneapolis. So kudos to everyone who supported that cause. And I think that's it as far as actual soccer content. So just checking in, Ryan, what you've been watching, what you've been up to, anything on the radar for you the next couple of days?
I saw Asteroid City last week, which I thought was very good. I enjoyed it. A decent kind of return to form for Wes Anderson. And then, I guess kind of on the horizon and everything for just kind of what's upcoming next. I think July is going to be pretty promising for films. I mean, Barbie, Oppenheimer, and then obviously Indiana Jones at the end of this month, which just fingers crossed I really want to do well. And then, we got more Secret Invasion starting tomorrow.
Indiana Jones is getting really mixed reviews. I don't know what to think. I mean, I love the series. Harrison Ford can slay me, but man, I'm hoping it ends up being decent. I didn't mind Crystal Skull, but I don't know. Yeah, getting sharks from Alan.
It was fine. We've been watching him in Shrinking.
Yes, and great show.
Yes, I'm just imagining that's Indiana Jones later in life. He just becomes a shrink and a grumpy old grandpa. But yeah,
that's just Harrison Ford playing himself.
I mean, he's so good. It's so good. We've been enjoying that one. That and RuPaul's Drag Race All Stars season 8 is finishing up, and so that's Friday. And then we've been, I think Project Runway has been doing like an all. I don't think it's all winter season. I think they're doing their all stars as well, and that's been great because I'm learning how to sew, and then watching these folks make clothes is like it puts the like TV show on another level. Like, how are they doing that? Like, I made a bag. Like, I'm like, I made a bag, and they're like, I'm just gonna whip up this dress in 12 hours. I'm just like, how? So yeah, we've been watching a lot of design and artsy things, and then Shrinking.
I was having a conversation about Project Runway with my mom, I think. Was there some sort of challenge where they had to like reinvent a toy into a dress? Am I imagining things?
I mean, that sounds about right. Like, my wife's been rewatching some of the first seasons, and the first season was wild. She said the first challenge, they take them to the grocery store and like, here's your challenge, very first season. There are some problematic things about some of the language in some of the early seasons, but that was like 20 years ago, and we were all idiots back then too. But yeah, that doesn't surprise me that they took a toy and had to reimagine. I haven't seen any of the newer episodes. We just watched they brought out like their worst design. They're like, here's your worst design, reimagine it. And I was like, oh, that's so mean.
that's cruel. Yeah.
Hey, remember this piece of
You mentioned the whole like progression of the series over time. That's something I kind of found with Top Chef as well, where like early seasons, they really lean into the bullying, the kind of brutality of being a restaurant chef, which a clear transition into what I've been checking out, which is The Bear. Binged it the night it came out, and then I've been doing like a slow rewatch because kind of losing my sanity. Just like staying up until 4 a.m. watching that show. But fantastic television, just the best acting, really great needle drops in terms of the music. Like, highly recommend checking out The Bear. Just amazing stuff. Anything else from you guys, or are we good to wrap? All right. I think the plan for us, just to throw the note out there, is to maybe take 4th of July off. I know Kaylor had mentioned, so may or may not be live next week. But if not, be sure to go to YouTube, check out the Kit Season archives, listen to the old USL shows in your podcast player if you're feeling a little bit depraved and missing us. But other than that, I did just want to say enjoy your week, and yeah, talk to you soon.
Thank you for watching another episode of the USL Show.
The USL Show is now proudly part of the Protagonist podcast family. Please go to protagonistsoccer.com to check out more work. Thanks for stopping by. We'll see everyone again next time.